May 19th, 1977. Standing on the gravel shoulder was a 20-year-old girl named Colleen Stan. She looked like any other young traveler of that time. She wore simple jeans, a light shirt, and carried a worn backpack filled with only the essentials. Her hair moved slightly in the breeze, and her eyes scanned the road with quiet patience. There was nothing unusual about her. Nothing that suggested that this day would become the dividing line between her old life and something far darker. Colleen wasn't careless. She was cautious by nature. Hitchhiking in the 1970s wasn't uncommon. Many young people did it. It was a normal way to travel long distances without money. But Colleen followed rules she had created for herself. She trusted her instincts. She didn't accept rides that didn't feel right. She had a destination in mind, Northern California. A friend was celebrating a birthday, and Colleen didn't want to miss it. She imagined laughter, music, and familiar faces. She imagined sitting under warm lights, surrounded by people who cared about her. The thought made her smile faintly as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Cars passed her. One slowed slightly, then continued driving. Another approached, then disappeared into the distance. Minutes stretched into an hour. Colleen remained patient. She told herself that the right ride would come. It always did. Eventually, she saw a vehicle approaching that caught her attention. It was a blue van. It slowed down gradually, tires crunching softly against the gravel as it came to a stop beside her. Colleen leaned forward slightly, trying to see inside. There was a man in the driver's seat. Beside him sat a woman, and in her arms was a small baby. That single detail changed everything. The presence of a baby created an instant sense of safety. The man leaned toward the open window and spoke calmly. "Do you need a ride?" His voice was soft, polite, almost gentle. Colleen hesitated for only a moment. She quickly studied their faces. The man appeared normal. His posture was relaxed. His expression was neutral. The woman beside him looked quiet and distant, holding the baby close to her chest. The baby made a small, innocent sound. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt threatening. Her instincts, which had protected her before, remained silent. "Yes," she replied softly. She opened the van door and climbed inside. The door closed behind her with a dull, final sound. At first, everything felt completely normal. The van merged back onto the highway, moving smoothly with the flow of traffic. The engine hummed steadily beneath her feet. The man introduced himself as Cameron. His tone remained calm, controlled. He asked simple questions: where she was going, where she was from, what she did. Colleen answered politely. She told him about the birthday party. She told him about her travels. She noticed the woman beside him barely spoke. She simply stared ahead, holding the baby in silence. There was something distant about her, something empty, but Colleen ignored it. She told herself not to overthink. The van continued forward. Minutes passed. Then something changed. The van slowed slightly. It turned off the main highway. Colleen felt a small flicker of confusion. She looked out the window. The familiar road was gone. In its place were smaller roads, quieter roads, surrounded by open land and scattered trees. There were fewer cars here, less movement, less life. A faint unease formed in her chest. She shifted slightly in her seat. "Is this the right way?" she asked carefully. There was no answer. The man kept driving. The silence grew heavier. The air inside the van felt different now, thicker, harder to breathe. Colleen's instincts, which had been silent before, began whispering warnings. Her heart beat faster. She told herself to stay calm. Maybe it was just a shortcut. The box pressed tightly against her face. The air inside felt limited, suffocating. Her breathing became fast and shallow. Panic surged through her body like electricity. She screamed. Her voice echoed uselessly inside the box. No one heard her. No one came. Her hands trembled. Her body shook violently. The baby's presence, the symbol of safety, had been nothing more than a lie. A disguise. A trap. The van door slammed shut. The sound echoed like a final sentence. The engine roared back to life. The van began moving again. Inside the darkness, Colleen lost all sense of direction. Time stopped existing. There was no light, no escape, only fear. Her mind raced with desperate thoughts. After hours of driving through roads she could not see, the van finally slowed. Inside the wooden box locked around her head, Colleen had lost all sense of direction. Every turn felt the same. Every stop felt temporary. Her neck throbbed from the tight pressure of the device. The air inside was warm and stale, and each breath came in short, shallow pulls. Time had stretched into something unrecognizable. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt endless. Then the van came to a complete stop. The engine shut off. Silence. Colleen's heart pounded violently in her chest. She heard movement. A door opening. Gravel crunching beneath footsteps. The van door slid open. Rough hands grabbed her. She tried to resist, but she was weak, disoriented, blind inside the box. Cameron pulled her from the vehicle and forced her forward. Her feet stumbled over uneven ground as he guided her toward a house she could not see. The air changed. The sound of an opening door. The echo of footsteps shifting from outside to inside. They had arrived. When the wooden device was finally removed from her head, her eyes struggled against the sudden light. She blinked rapidly, her vision adjusting. She was inside a house. An ordinary house. Plain walls. Simple furniture. Nothing about it suggested danger. He began establishing rules immediately. His voice was calm but firm. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not look at me. You will obey every instruction. There was no shouting, no chaos. His control came from certainty, from confidence. Colleen trembled, her mind racing, trying to understand what was happening. Then Cameron introduced something far more terrifying than chains. He told her about the company. His tone shifted as he explained it, almost as if he were sharing confidential information. According to him, the company was a powerful underground organization. Secret, influential, dangerous. It monitored everything. It had members everywhere, in cities, towns, even within law enforcement. He told her they had been watching her long before that day on the highway. He said they had selected her. He claimed she now belonged to them. Her heart pounded as she listened. He described the company in detail, how it punished disobedience, how it tracked escapees, how it destroyed families of those who resisted. He leaned closer as he spoke the next. She was isolated, completely cut off from the world she once knew. And in isolation, fear grows stronger. Without information to challenge it, a lie can become reality. He controlled when she was allowed to speak. Sometimes he left her alone for long periods, increasing her sense of abandonment. Other times he returned unexpectedly, reinforcing the unpredictability of her situation. Then he introduced the box. Not the head box this time. A larger wooden box beneath his bed. It was barely big enough to hold her body. When he forced her inside for the first time, the reality of her captivity deepened. The space was cramped. She could not stretch fully. Her knees pressed against wood. Her shoulders ached from being hunched. The lid closed above her, sealing her in darkness once again. Air holes provided just enough oxygen, but not comfort. Time disappeared inside that box. Only silence. Sometimes she remained there for hours. Other times, for what felt like days. Her muscles began to weaken. Her sense of time fractured. She drifted between wakefulness and restless sleep. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Time passed almost imperceptibly for Colleen Stan, trapped in the confines of the wooden box beneath Cameron Hooker's bed. The box had become both her world and her prison. The real prison was the psychological one Cameron had built around her mind. Every day, he reminded her of the company, the fictitious organization that supposedly monitored her constantly. Even in the few minutes when she was allowed outside the box, performing chores or helping in the kitchen, the constant presence of Cameron's gaze reminded her of the psychological chains she could not see but could never escape. Calculated, constrained by fear. Even the small tasks she performed, cooking, cleaning, running errands around the house, were exercises in obedience, constant reminders of the captivity she endured. Over time, Cameron increased her responsibilities within the house. Colleen began to cook meals, clean floors, and maintain the household under his strict supervision. The walls of the house, the floors, the ceilings, all became extensions of her invisible cage. Years passed. 7 long, unyielding years. 7 years of confinement, darkness, and mental torture. 7 years of living in a reality that Cameron had constructed and enforced. Colleen became a shadow of the person she once was. Each day was a careful balance between survival and compliance. Cameron made a critical error. He grew overconfident. He underestimated the resilience of the human spirit. After years of total control, he assumed Colleen had fully submitted, that she no longer had the capacity to resist. He left small windows of opportunity unattended, mistakes born of arrogance, doors unlocked momentarily, routines that became predictable, and lapses in supervision. These were the cracks in his otherwise perfect system. Colleen, despite the psychological chains, had not been idle. She had observed, remembered, and silently analyzed every detail, preparing for the moment when she could seize control of her own destiny, of memorizing, of strategizing. Cameron may have controlled her body, but he could not fully dominate her mind. Not yet. Cameron's overconfidence created the first real chance for escape. Finally, guilt overwhelmed fear. Janice could no longer remain silent. She approached Colleen one day while Cameron was away, her hands trembling, her voice soft yet urgent. "Colleen," she whispered, "I need to tell you the truth." Colleen, conditioned to obedience and terror, froze. Her mind struggled to comprehend these words. Gently yet firmly. "There is no company. It's all a lie. Cameron made it up. You've been held here, yes, but not by an invisible organization. He controlled you because he wanted to. None of it was real. You are free to leave if you choose." She sat silently, trembling, staring at the floor. She wanted to hope, to believe, but years of manipulation had trained her brain to doubt, to obey, to fear. Slowly, the truth began to sink in. Filling in the details of Cameron's manipulation, the hollow framework of fear that had dominated Colleen's thoughts began to crumble. It was horrifying to realize the extent of the control Cameron had maintained. Every object she saw, the furniture, the walls, even the familiar wooden box, now carried a new meaning. They were no longer instruments of fear, but markers of survival. Fear still lingered, like a shadow at the edge of her perception, but it no longer dictated every choice. Colleen realized she could act. She began speaking more openly with Janice, asking questions about the outside world, about Cameron's routines, about opportunities for escape. Janice supported her cautiously but resolutely, offering guidance and reassurance. Together, they mapped out a plan that balanced caution with action, understanding that any sudden or reckless move could provoke Cameron's wrath. The day Colleen Stan stepped out of Cameron Hooker's house was unlike any day she had experienced in the 7 long years of her captivity. The hum of passing cars, the distant chatter of pedestrians, the flutter of birds in nearby trees, struck her senses with a clarity she had not felt in years. The house behind her, once a prison of fear and control, believed that she would remain tethered to fear. She moved past the front yard, down the familiar street, and toward the first signs of normal life. A bus stop, a small convenience store, people going about their ordinary routines. At the bus station, Colleen finally allowed herself to pause. She felt a flood of emotions. Colleen immediately contacted her family. The reunion was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and overwhelming emotion. Her parents had grieved her loss for years, holding on to the hope that she might still be alive, even as that hope had dimmed with time. When they finally heard her voice, saw her face, and felt the warmth of her presence, tears flowed freely. They could barely comprehend that the daughter they thought lost forever was standing before them. The years of fear, uncertainty, and despair suddenly collided with joy, relief, and the profound recognition that miracles, though rare, were possible. Police were notified immediately. Investigators acted quickly, knowing that Cameron Hooker had been a master manipulator, cunning and calculated. As law enforcement officers approached the house, they realized the shocking truth. Cameron had hidden Colleen in plain sight for 7 years. The house on a quiet suburban street had looked normal, perfectly ordinary, and the neighbors had never suspected anything unusual. Friends, co-workers, and acquaintances had no idea of the horrors unfolding behind closed doors. It was a chilling reminder of how easily fear and deception could mask the truth. Cameron Hooker was arrested without incident. He had no opportunity to flee. His reign of control was over, dismantled not by force alone, but by the quiet courage and strategic thinking of his captive. In the courtroom, Cameron remained unyielding. He denied the worst of the accusations, tried to minimize the severity of his crimes, and attempted to shift blame onto others. But Colleen's courage, combined with the overwhelming evidence, left no room for doubt. The jury deliberated, and ultimately, Cameron Hooker was convicted. He was sentenced to 104 years in prison, ensuring that he would never have the opportunity to harm another person again. Justice, though delayed, had been served. Colleen, once imprisoned both physically and psychologically, had achieved what many thought impossible: survival, reclamation of her freedom, and the triumph of truth over manipulation. The aftermath of the trial brought a complex mixture of emotions. Colleen faced the challenge of rebuilding her life, learning to trust again, and reconnecting with a world that had seemed so distant for 7 years. Therapy, support from her family, and her own resilience became essential tools in her recovery. She had lost years of normal life, yet she carried forward a profound understanding of human resilience, courage, and the power of the mind to overcome oppression. Her story spread rapidly, becoming one of the most disturbing yet inspiring cases in modern American true crime history. It was a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk behind appearances, of how manipulation can imprison a mind as effectively as chains imprison a body. Yet it was also a testament to the enduring power of hope, courage, and truth. If you found this story compelling and want to hear more shocking true crime stories like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell. There's more suspenseful, real-life stories coming every week, and you won't want to miss a single one.